This video is sponsored by Storyblocks. What's good, creative fam? Brandon Washington here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at this guy. This is my Red Komodo 6K, and I've had this camera for actually closer to like 7 to 8 months, but this is going to be my 6-month review / half-year review of owning this camera. Now, the main reason why I wanted to make this video was because I know that when, shopping for a camera, it's great to get people's initial impressions on the camera. There, you can really find out about things like image quality, workflow, things like that, which are things that I am going to cover in this video, but it's also really nice to kind of get a long-term review of a camera so you can really see what it's like to actually use the camera, operate the camera, and find all the little quirks that can be really troublesome when you really can't figure those things out in the first couple of weeks. So that's the reason why I'm going to be making this 6-month review. Now, I think it would be pretty much a crime to not talk about the obvious, and that is the image quality. When it comes to this camera, the image quality is absolutely amazing. I've actually had the pleasure of shooting with this camera on probably close to 50, maybe 60 projects, and that number is only growing like dramatically. And so by being able to use it on all these different projects, I've been able to see how it works in different situations, and I've been able to really see where the power of this image quality comes in, especially in post. I've always known that Red RAW was the raw codec that I wanted to work with. However, when having to rely on it reasonably close to 5 to 7 times a month, and those are different projects, you really realize how important having that raw is. Being able to make slight tweaks to your white balance and being able to have all that dynamic range and all that control in post really go a long way, especially when you're running and gunning so fast sometimes that you don't have time to dial things in just perfectly. It is so nice to have that raw to be able to rely on. Now, that being said, 99% of what I shoot gets shot in LQ, so this isn't even the highest quality raw you could potentially get out of this camera, but personally I absolutely love the images that I've gotten out of it, and I would not want to go with any other type of raw. Now, when shooting raw is not all sunshines and rainbows. One of the biggest drawbacks, one of the things that over the last 6 months I have really found to be a huge detriment to this camera is file size. Now, I shoot everything raw, and this includes interviews that sometimes can last up to 30 minutes long. And now there are some slight tweaks you can do here in order to make your image quality not lesser, but make your file sizes smaller. And one of those is that you could shoot in ProRes, because this camera does shoot in ProRes. But what I find, especially when shooting in LQ, is that the file sizes really don't make that big of a difference, and I'd rather have that control in post just in case I need it. So what does this mean? This means I've been buying the heck out of some hard drives. I spent so much money on hard drives recently, and that is so that I can have a good backup solution, but more importantly, so I can have a place to offload the footage. Now, when you record to the Red, you are going to be recording to the CFast card, and one thing you do need to note is that there is no way to delete individual clips on the Red from the Red. So what this means is that if you accidentally burn a clip and you don't really want it, you want to try to save some space, there's no option for that. You either format the entire card or nothing at all. This is kind of a huge downer with this camera, and it makes it kind of difficult to make sure that when you're rolling that you really want to be rolling and that you're not wasting any footage. But at the end of the day, it's just something that you learn to work with. Now, as you guys can currently see, my Red Komodo is pretty stripped down right now with just a lens on it, not even a battery solution on here at the moment. But this is actually one of my favorite things about this camera, and that is the different ways you can build this out. I've had this camera pretty much built out this way with one of the Anton base batteries on the bottom, and been able to use this camera on something as small as like a DJI Ronin S. And what's awesome is that you can definitely shoot it that small and get amazing images out of it, but then you can also build the camera up into a much bigger rig with multiple batteries on it and having wireless transmitters and monitors and cages and top handles and matte boxes and all of that slapped onto the camera. And what's nice is that you have a system that really allows you to be as flexible as the job needs you to be. You need a small weight camera that you can just rig somewhere small, tight in a small location. This camera can do it. You need to rig this camera out really big and beefy so that way you can get everything dialed in the exact way you need it and it's all wrapped around your camera. You can do that too. That is one of the most amazing things about this camera, is just how versatile it is. Being that cube design really does allow it to be very modular. Now, that being said, it's still super lightweight. And that is what's so great about it. So even when you do choose to rig this camera out in a very big, bulky design, it's still significantly lighter than most other cameras that you're going to be rigging out in that same fashion. Now, speaking of rigging this camera out, let's quickly talk about a couple of the accessories that I have been using. Now, the first major accessory you're going to need with this camera is obviously battery life. Now, I have found that the best battery solution for me has definitely been the Anton Bauer solutions. Now, there's two main solutions that I run with this camera. The first is using the micro batteries on the back of this camera. They work phenomenally. They're nice and small and compact, and it allows you just to attach a V-mount battery directly to the back. The other one is the Titan base batteries, which are fantastic again, especially when using it on a gimbal. By being able to actually attach the battery underneath the camera when using it on a gimbal, this just allows you to keep the center of gravity in the middle of the camera versus having all that weight on the back and then having to deal with counterbalances and things like that. So personally, these have been my go-to batteries with this system. I do plan on doing an entire video kind of breaking down this system a whole lot more and my whole cage and rig and breakdown. So if you guys have more questions about that, definitely add those down below. As far as monitors and cages go, I'm still rocking with the wooden camera cage system. And as far as the monitors go, I was using the Small HD for a very long time, which I do love, but I have since switched over to the Portkeys monitor, primarily because this monitor has an SDI out. This is crucial, especially when I'm running wireless transmission. This means that I can take my SDI signal out of the camera, go into that monitor, and then I can go out of that monitor into the wireless transmitter. And this is great, especially when I'm working with a very COVID safe set, or I just need to have somebody else operate camera while I'm directing and I can just view it on my director's monitor. Now, there are a few small little things that you really have to understand when it comes to working with the Red Komodo. The first is dealing with audio. Now, yes, this camera does have a 3.5mm audio jack built into it, and it can actually do a fantastic job at capturing audio internally, but the preamps are not great, and you're not going to have as much flexibility with those audio channels in post. So I have found myself having to run all of my audio externally. Now, personally, this is actually the way I prefer to do it, primarily because it gives you a safety net or a backup. And then what I'll do is I'll actually run the audio from my audio mixer into that 3.5mm jack into the camera. Then I have a nice clean set of audio going into camera, but then I also have that being recorded to my mixer itself, which is fantastic in all. So that way I kind of have a nice, better version of that audio, and it's also in two places. But then this is something that I find that, you know, it just comes with the territory. You're not going to be able to run all your audio straight into this camera like you would with something like a C70 or a FX6 or FX3 for that matter. So yes, as great as the image quality is on this camera, when it comes to audio, this camera is not really designed to be capturing audio itself. So I would make sure that if that is something you're going to need to do, you figure out an external solution for the audio problem. Now, real quick before I jump into, is this camera still worth it 6 months later? I got to quickly thank today's video sponsor, Storyblocks. Now, Storyblocks is an all-in-one platform that allows you to download royalty-free stock images, music, and After Effects assets that allow you to really create more. Now, regardless if you're creating your own personal content or you're creating content for brands and other companies, this is a one-stop shop for finding some of the most diverse stock video you can find online. Storyblocks has recently committed to creating a more diverse portfolio of stock video. This means that you can find images from people from all walks of life. In the same way you are probably in situations like me where you're looking for different groups that normally aren't represented in a lot of stock video, Storyblocks is committed to adding a lot more stock video that represents these groups to their portfolio. If you are looking for stock video for your work, for client work, this really is the best place to go. And at one low monthly price, you have unlimited access to as many downloads as you want of over 1 million assets that are just continually growing and adding new stuff every single month. Be sure to check out the link down below in the description to check out Storyblocks. They support this channel, so if you're in need of stock video, support them too. So here it is, the $1 million question. Is it worth it? Personally, I have to say yes. When it comes to being able to have a camera that is reliable, that's gonna get the job done, and that's gonna give you the best post-production process you can get, the Red Komodo to me has been one of the best cameras I've ever used. Now, one big question I always get is, did the Red Komodo specifically get you more work? And the honest answer is no. I have had a few people reach out to rent the camera, but I've honestly been so busy that I haven't really been able to let the camera go because I've been using it almost on a daily, weekly basis. So because of that reason, I will say that yes, there are some opportunities there to be able to rent the camera out, but I wouldn't say that the camera itself is going to get you more jobs unless you happen to be in an industry or you're working in a city where people are just really coveting that Red brand. But here in Houston, Texas, that's really not the case. You know, these last couple months with this camera have been a dream, and I'm really excited to continue to use this camera. Sure, there are things that I wish this camera had to offer, like better frame rates or some type of time-lapse mode built into the camera. I would really love it if this camera could shoot a little bit better in low light, but personally, this camera to me has been a phenomenal addition to my entire company and has been a great asset to all the jobs that we've been doing and all the jobs I know we have coming up in the future. So I don't plan on changing cameras anytime soon unless Red comes out with possibly a better version of the Komodo, but I wouldn't want anything bigger. I would just want something a little bit more feature rich, but we'll have to wait and see what Red does in the future. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.